So, I'm a familiar now? 03 There they come, James POV. James expected a lot of things to jump out of the bush, but a 1.1 meter tall, 3-inch 7-foot, fur-eyed bipedal lizard with two pairs of hands tied in front of it and a stylish fur coat armor was not one of them. Stopping his strike in midair, James gawked at the creature in front of him in utter amazement. As it emerged from the bush and saw him, it stiffened up and then closed its eyes, now shaking uncontrollably. Not knowing what to do, James waited in the same pose until the lizard opened its eyes, and only then he put away his spade slowly and steadily. The lizard fell to its knees and clutched onto the weird bird he saw earlier in its embrace. Looking carefully at the creature in front of him, he could see that the poor thing looked exhausted and thirsty, with its dark gray scales full of mud and deep scratches over the parts of its head and arms he could see. He took off his backpack and poured some water from his water pouch into the cup, and wanted to help the lizard chase its thirst away. As he turned around to give it the cup, he could see a weird thing hiding in a bush behind the lizard. It looked like a big cat, but with leather armor on its side and two tails. One of those tails pushed a nearby branch out of its way, while the other was holding some sort of yellow stone emitting a strange dim light. The cat-like thing was about 30 to 40 centimeters, 11 foot 1 inch 4, tall and a bit over half a meter, 2, long. Its tail's half the length of its body. Its armor was dotted by soft green and dim yellow sparks. Its claws were visible to the naked eye, and its teeth were slowly finding their way out of its maw. He watched it carefully while offering the cup of water to the lizard, so he did not miss the moment the weird cat lunged at the lizard he was taking care of, clearly with malicious intent. Out of the protector's reflex, he kicked the cat-like thing away into the bush. He purposefully hit the armor on its side to hopefully teach it a lesson, but not to hurt it severely. After all, if it was intelligent enough to wear armor, it might be able to communicate with him. This, however, was not enough, as he heard a crack from the impact of his metal-tipped army marching shoe on its armored side. The thing let out a pained yelp, and inertia from the kick sent it flying halfway through the bush. It then lied there motionless, all the sparks of its armor disappearing. The lizard snapped to attention and looked behind itself in an instant and then at James again, almost falling off to the side in the process. James could hear another of those things making its way through the bush to the side of him, where he kicked the one earlier. He looked at the little lizard and, kneeling down in front of it, offered his hand to hold on to. After a moment of visible doubt in its eyes, the lizard caught onto his hand and James lifted it and, surprised by its small weight, placed it in front of his backpack, where it could lean against the soft backrest. Giving it the cup of water that he hadn't spilled on the ground, James took hold of his spade again and stood up, looking at the bushes where something was snapping some twigs and rustling the leaves. There he could see 5 yellow bodies moving amongst the leaves. All of them glowed in green sparks, but just one of them had the yellow ones as well. After a short while 4 yellow cat-like beings came out of the bush, while the 5th one with yellow sparks began to soundlessly crawl to them through a bush. "This ain't gonna be fun," James said, eyeing the 4 in front. The 5th one was still too far away to make any difference. All of their armor had the same design. A crest, showcasing a yellow and white tower shield with 3 red claw marks diagonally over the surface. The armor was brown-colored with not a lot of wear visible. Obviously newer or well-kept armors. And all of them had those green sparks that unnerved James. Suddenly, the leftmost one darted directly at him, trying to gauge his reaction. Unimpressed by the speed, James repeated what he did with the last one that tried to attack him and, disregarding its claws attacking his protected ankle, launched a kick at its unguarded armored side. One quick kick was all it took to make it unable to keep on fighting, as it joined its friend on the ground, this time writhing in pain. It landed on the ground near the bush the 5th one was just crawling through, startling it enough to stop its movement. Those green sparks of its armor glowing brighter and starting to enter its body, the rest looked at their fallen companion and, thinking of their next move, gave James enough time to gain proper balance again and take a defensive posture. With a couple of low growls and hisses, the other three attacked James at once. One of them tried to bait James into kicking him by running around him in a wide circle toward his left and snapping at his feet, while the other two ran around him to his right and, while staying side by side, aimed for the lizard which leaned against his backpack. What the two did not expect, however, was the spade that flew streaked from their left flank and hit them like an axe. Flinging them away, the first one to be hit was lying on the ground eerily quiet with a pool of turquoise fluid, probably blood James thought, forming underneath it. The second one was in slightly better condition. It only received a secondary impact, but even that was enough to break its right rear leg and send it flying through the air and into a group of mushrooms, smashing them in the process. There it hissed in pain and tried to get away, green sparks homing onto its broken leg. James turned to the last one that had been running in circles around him, now standing across from the lizard and safely out of his reach. He took a while to assess the situation he found himself in. He was now facing forward, with the lizard about 4 meters, 13 foot, behind him and the one hiding about 1 meter, 3 feet 3 inches, behind him and in the bush to his left. It was clear what they were trying to do. So obvious, in fact, that James took a while to consider the possibility of a trap. There was not a high chance of it. Instead, he was presented with a chance to make a trap of his own. He'd play along with the bastards. Taking the spade into his right hand, James used his left hand to pull out his machete from its scabbard on his left thigh. With a spade in his right hand and a machete in the left one, he stepped forward towards the creature in front of him, then he quickly turned around counterclockwise, throwing his spade, aiming in front of the one which just rushed out of the bush. Continuing his spin, James lowered the blade of the machete to be perpendicular to the ground, with its tip just centimeters from hitting it. Seeing him turning around, the last of the 4 Kerman took it as its chance to kill the weird being in front of it. Rushing forward with its claws and fangs ready to strike the target. It did not notice the sharp edge cutting through the air in its direction until the blade connected with its front leg, cutting through it, cutting it off, and continuing almost undisturbed towards and through its neck. James, finishing his spin, paid no attention to the turquoise blood spilling all over his boots and rushed to the lizard and the last Kerman, just to stop his rush after seeing the results of his throw. He then slowly walked towards the carcass in front of him. Daria POV, she could not believe her eyes. In the beginning, when those 4 elite guards jumped out of foliage, she lost all semblance of hope. Those were the elite soldiers who guarded Kermans of royal status. Literally, 1 out of about 500 soldiers could even begin to think of becoming one. Every child or pup or hatchling wanted to either be one, or to be someone important enough to be protected by at least one. With those state-of-the-art hunting armors of unified design, they were faster and stronger than a regular Kerman. Those armors did not provide any protection aside from getting grazed by branches and stuff, but their true value was in their support abilities, replenishing the wearer's stamina and water expenditures, as well as providing healing in case of injury and enhancing spells while worn by the caster. And yet, the thing didn't care about those features at all and absolutely destroyed the first one to attack it by simply kicking it to the side once, while completely disregarding its claws or fangs assaulting its joint. Over the course of her career, she hadn't seen a Kerman get hurt in a match, let alone when there were more of them working in unison. She was quite surprised when she saw the elite guard flying helplessly through the air with its face was contorted in pain from a kick that had enough power to break its bones and probably produce fatal internal bleeding. After a moment of shocked silence, Daria snapped her attention to the rest of the guards, just in time to see their coordinated attack begin. After her hor-zero-ibble realization that 2 out of the 3 Kerman were oming after her struck home, Daria prepared for a desperate last stand with her back still pressed against the thing's weird bag. Just to be amazed once again by the thing simply swinging one of its arms and hitting them from their flank. The first guard was most definitely dead on the spot. A puddle of fresh Kerman blood was good enough proof to say that. The second guard was chucked a large distance, right into a group of extremely toxic mushrooms, where it began to breathe its last breaths whilst thrashing uncontrollably. There was no helping those two. The last of the guards stood motionless at the opposite side of the thing, staring at her with hatred, determination, and, was that mockery in its expression? Looking around wildly, Viria noticed a movement in the bushes to her left. It was Prince Naker staring at her through foliage. As soon as she noticed him, her body tensed up, and she saw that yellow and pink mana started to float all around her, binding her in place and preventing her from moving anything except her head and eyes. This was an effect of magic stones the Kerman used from time to time. These stones were incredibly rare and expensive, because even if you did not know how to cast spells, all you needed to know was how to channel your mana. You could cast the spells engraved into these stones for as long as they lasted. Kerman could use 2 stones at one time, holding one in each of their tails. And right now, she was bound by 2 of their favorite spells, Silence and Bound. She couldn't move to escape or fight the predator lurking in the shadows, and neither could she alert the thing of her dire state. This would be an unbearable situation to anyone she knew, including herself, but now she had something to believe in. The thing in front of her was now her one and only hope to get out of this situation alive. So, she believed in her savior. Even as it made its first step away from her, and her mind fell into a blank state, she still watched the surrounding scene. When she'd later recall events of this fight, she always wondered how he did it. All she saw was him stepping forward, which provoked the prince into attack, then suddenly turning around, with a blur of a movement heading towards her, continuing to turn and cutting off the head of the final guard, while at the same time hitting Prince Naker in the side with the thrown weapon, piercing his skin and innards, killing him on the spot. As the prince died, the spells he maintained lost their effect and Viria became free to move her body. Mustering what strength remained in her, Viria stood up and saw the thing walk towards its thrown weapon. He walked to the still warm body of her former bane and, seeing the blunt edge poking out of Naker's side, began to search for anything that could help her cut the rope tying her arms together. The thing pulled its weapon out of the body and cleaned both weapons on own grass that was growing nearby. After cleaning and holstering one of its weapons, it came to Viria and kneeled next to her, signaling her to show it her tied arms. She responded by stretching both pairs in front of her. The thing took a moment to study the knots on both hands, trying to untie them. Due to the size of its fingers, however, it wasn't able to do so. With a sigh, it took out the biggest knife Viria had ever seen and cut the ropes tying her wrists together. Finally, Viria was once again one step closer to the freedom she desired so much. With her hands free, she could simply climb into safety, then spend the rest of the time needed to unlock the bracket that forced her to wear this rigged armor. She ran around for a while, trying to get her blood flowing in her arms, and then climbed to a tree crown, just to check if she was in good enough condition to climb. The thing watched her the whole time, drinking from its metal bottle. When Viria came down to the ground, she was offered water once again, which she happily accepted. After freshening up, Viria stood up and walked to each soldier, collecting their cast stones and any usable gear and materials. She was looking for a certain item, a necklace of languages, or one of its lesser versions. One could use these necklaces to communicate with those he did not understand. Unfortunately, she found only a few items they could use: 5 cast stones with silence, 1 with bind, 2 with heal minor wounds, 1 with hydrate and 1 with search imprinted. She also found a length of rope and some dried rations. Now she had to make a choice. Would she leave on her own and try to survive through the night by herself? That seemed impossible. She'd have to stay close to her protector. She did not even take notice of the prince hidden in the bushes mere meters away from her, yet the thing knew about him and thwarted his surprise attack. Not only that, but she'd also have to rest very soon. The question was how to communicate with the thing. Viria was sure the thing was sentient because it used tools and knew when to stop its attack. Unfortunately, she did not find any of those necklaces, nor did she know its language, so she had two options left. Continue with the pantomime they'd already begun to practice, or try using telepathy. One problem was that only very few sentient races reacted positively to telepathy and agreed to use it. While she thought about all these things, she felt pressure on her shoulder, and after looking up she saw Agniana's pleading gaze. She was looking for a treat, and she would get one. She deserved it for finding Darius such a great ally. Taking a look in her supply bag filled her with a sense of grief, anger, and hopelessness. Obviously, in the eyes of the Kerman, it was not enough to take away her tamed beasts, which she spent more than 8 years of her life collecting and making friends with, in some cases even creating bonds. What Darius saw in her tamer bag breached the mental barriers she had built while serving in the land of Kerman, and she began to cry tears of sorrow. She cried out to the skies, she regretted even leaving her home country. Then out of nowhere, a shadow befell her, as the thing came running to her and gently embraced her in its strong arms. Protected by those strong arms, Viria cried her sorrow out, after which she fell to the merciful sleep of the exhausted in the warm embrace of her savior. James' POV. As James turned around to rush to the lizard's aid, he saw the spade he had thrown wedged deep in the flank of the cat thing that was hiding in the bushes. There were some residual sparks of yellow and pink floating in the air around the lizard, but the lizard itself seemed fine as it stood up and went to the carcass. James took hold of his spade again and pulled it out of the body. With his machete in one hand and his spade in the other, he cleaned the blood and other parts using a patch of grass, after which he holstered the machete but kept the spade close. Kneeling in front of the lizard, James signaled it to hold its arms straight, so he could see the knots. They looked like they could be untied. So he gave it a try, but without luck. Begrudgingly, he took out his knife and carefully cut the rope. It was a nice rope and could come in handy. Unfortunately, his fingers were too big and could not untie it. The lizard seemed very happy with the changes, as it began to swing its arms about and even quickly climbed a tree. It reminded him of his pet cat he had as a kid, as it also got overly excited and climbed whatever was nearby as soon as he got home. Pouring some water into his cup attracted the lizard's attention back to him. He gave it the cup and took another sip from the bottle. After the lizard drank some water, it darted around the bodies, checking various compartments and bags James did not see, collecting those things in the dirt next to his bag. His attention was drawn by 10 small cubes of different colors and with script he did not recognize. They shined brightly in sunlight and were far more interesting than the rope and something that looked like dried meat or mushrooms nearby. The lizard seemed to be pondering something, so he left it to its own thoughts and started to clean his shoes from drying blood. He was halfway done with the first one when he heard a shriek come from the lizard. Rushing over, James found it looking into one of the bags that were fixed to its armor. In the bag there were little compartments of cubic form. And almost half of those little compartments were filled with what he could describe only as pieces of animals. Some of them had pieces of fur, some others just a feather or a bone. One of them had a bird head with its eyes scooped out. James did not know what that meant, but it clearly was not good for the lizard. He embraced it gently, trying to get it to calm down. After approximately 20 minutes of soothing, the lizard fell asleep in his embrace. Lifting it up gently, James brought it to the center of this clearing and laid it on the ground. Taking another look into the bag, he decided to take it off of her. He cut through a few rough stitches and removed the bag from the armor, placing it into his own backpack beneath some t-shirts and his cape. Looks like we'll spend the night here. I should start digging a fire pit. With this thought, he took the spade in his hand and began looking for a favorable place for it. About 2 minutes after he began his search, he noticed a figure, seemingly made out of glittering moonlight, looking at him.